It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wide discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
All right, hello there, South Mississippi, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I am senior meteorologist Wesley Williams. Almost gave you the outro there, but let's start with the intro because we are introducing those rain chances for you this Wednesday. Some of you are already done with the rain, and what comes next? A cold front. And we're going to talk about all the changes that brings to our weather pattern for today. So let's take you to the map here. And we'll make that full so you can see it on your entire screen what's going on. So for many of us, the rain has already come and has already gone. The rain, if we pause the first alert radar during the 8 o'clock hour, time now 8:31, circle where the rain is located, it's basically done with much of South Mississippi. It is on the way out toward the east. We managed to get 0 rumbles of thunder out of this, and we also, fortunately, were spared from any gusty winds, from any downpours, but it was a decent, steady, soaking rain that we were able to pick up overnight. Here's the thing. Ahead of that front, the weather is kind of mild, relatively speaking, but behind the front, it is cooling down, and we can actually take a look at the temperature change over the last 24 hours to show you what we're looking at temperature change wise. So yeah, with the front located, you can tell where the front is, right? It's basically in between those changes. So ahead of the front, that's where things have been warming up this morning. That's why you can walk outside and not feel like you're shivering this morning, because it's not as chilly as the last few mornings. That being said, there is some cooler air behind this front, and our neighbors in North Mississippi are already getting a taste of that. Temperatures are down in a place like Tunica, which has been near freezing this morning. And so that's what we're going to watch for today. Really, over the next 24 hours will be for the advance of all of this cooler, chillier air to eventually try to roll down toward us in South Mississippi. You'll be able to really notice this, I think, as we go to the second half of the day, and we won't hit the 60s like we did yesterday. You know, yesterday we had some nice mild 60s for much of South Mississippi, but today with the breezy winds coming in from the northwest, that's that chilly wind from the northwest that is going to pull down the cooler air down toward our coast, and will lead to us experiencing a cool snap, basically a 36-hour cool snap, which begins this afternoon and continues as we go through tonight and tomorrow night, and then it's kind of done. So a 36 to 48-hour cool snap. We go to Friday afternoon, and it'll be already starting to turn milder with more 60s coming back into the picture. Now, if we take a closer look at first alert radar, like I said, many of us are kind of drying out as far as rain is concerned. You can see places like Pensacola still seeing some of those showers this morning. However, it looks like for places closer to us in the 6 southernmost counties, the rain's kind of winding down, and we're just left with some clouds and maybe a few light raindrops here and there. So that's a look at the remainder of your Wednesday forecast. Earlier this morning, the rain chance was higher at like 70 or 80%, but the later we go into the morning, the more that chance continues to drop. And as we go to the next hour, the 9 o'clock hour, that chance is expected to drop down to 30%. So that is how we continue to step closer and closer to a drier Wednesday afternoon. It will, like I said, it will turn breezy though, so you don't want to be caught off guard by that. Here's a look at the futurecast. Again, those rain chances dropping as we go to the next few hours. 30% during the 8 o'clock hour, 30% during the 9 o'clock hour, 20% during the 10 o'clock hour this morning, and by the time we get to lunchtime, it's down to 10% or less. Those breezy winds are expected to kick in from the northwest the deeper we go into Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday evening, and it's going to be turning colder at the same time, so we might actually have to talk about wind chill, believe it or not. So there's a look at the temperatures this morning, seeing those 50s across the map. Can some of us make it to 60 or 61 or 62 today? Sure, it's a possibility, but it will probably only be brief. And again, once those chilly northwest winds start to kick in, it's going to kind of wipe those lower 60s away. So I want to show you, for example, at noon, right? The modeling is showing 62 degrees in Pascagoula. But notice there's a difference, right? Poplarville 57. So that's, it's all kind of cool, but it's going to be chilliest for some of our inland interior locations where you're going to be closer to the source of that cold, the chillier air getting to y'all first because it's coming in from the northwest. It takes the chillier air a little bit longer to get down to some of our coastal locations as well as some of our places closer to Alabama like Jackson County. So, but watch what happens to the temperature in Pascagoula between noon and 3 p.m. It gets cooler. That's very unusual, right? Usually between noon and 3 p.m. the temperature goes up. But because we have this cooler air moving in from the northwest, the temperatures are hitting reverse and they're actually cooling down during the middle of the day. That's I will just be frank, it's a very difficult thing to forecast with high precision because it's difficult to tell the rate at which the cooling will occur by the hour and then over so many different locations. So our models try their best to do that, but understand that there's probably going to be some wiggle room here, I would imagine, by up to 5 degrees, plus or minus 5 degrees, as far as, how cool it can be at times as we go to this afternoon. So there's going to be a bit of uncertainty baked in because you have competing features with the temperatures. Since the temperatures naturally want to go up from noon to 3 p.m. because it's the middle of the day, it's an afternoon, and that's what happens. Temperatures go up. But it's competing with chilly air moving in at the same time that the temperatures naturally go up. So those competing features make for a fairly complicated and tricky temperature forecast, and modeling is not very precise when it comes to that. So just want to give you that kind of caveat there. Beware of some of these numbers might not be exact. Now, one thing's for sure, once we get away from that 12 or that noon to 3 p.m. time frame, when we go to the 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. time frame, we know it's supposed to get cooler. At this time of year, February, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., you get into the sunset, the temperatures are going to be dropping. Now, you have the normal or the natural decrease of temperature combined with the chilly air moving in from the northwest. I can predict a pretty rapid fall in those temperatures. So watch the numbers you see there. See what happens from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. There's basically a 10-degree drop in just 3 hours for many locations. And we go from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and that's going to be an even sharper drop. So expect temperatures to really start to plummet this evening. And it's not just about temperature because it's going to be breezy too. So we have to talk about a wind chill as well. And as we take a look at the temperatures and wind chills, we'll make this full so you can take a look at some of those numbers. And for example, you can see by 9 p.m. we've got temperature. Now there's going to be a range, right? This is one number for Gulfport, Biloxi, but Poplarville's number will probably be cooler. Wiggins' number will probably be cooler, etc. But for Gulfport, Biloxi, a temperature around 46 by 9 p.m. would equate to about a 40-degree wind chill. And notice overnight, we're seeing the temperatures dropping to freezing. So that's why you want to protect people, pets, and plants before you go to bed tonight, because by the time we wake up tomorrow, we're seeing those cold freezing temperatures, which could damage plants, and they could also harm people and pets. And then you've got the wind chills, which are dropping to below freezing as well. That's cold enough with wind chills in the 20s to potentially harm people and pets as well. Remember, plants do not feel wind chill because plants do not feel, they don't have skin to feel with. That's why we feel wind chill, because we have a little warm bubble of air around our body, and when the wind blows, it blows that warm bubble of air away from us, and so we start to feel colder. This applies to all warm-bodied things with skin, which plants do not fall underneath that category. Pipes also do not fall underneath that category. So wind chill is not a factor for pipes. It is not a factor for plants. It is only a factor for people and pets. So that's why I use those numbers for that. But for the pipes and the plants, the temperature number is the number you use. And it's not going to be cold enough to damage pipes, but it is going to be cold enough to harm, or rather damage plants overnight. So the cool snap that we're getting through here, you can literally see it on the 7-day forecast. It starts this afternoon or this evening, continues tonight with a light freeze and some very cold wind chills in the 20s by the time we wake up Thursday. Thursday afternoon, below normal temperatures, but at least it's sunny and dry. It will be a little breezy at times on Thursday. Thursday night to Friday morning, the winds relax, so that's good. We won't have to deal with as much of a wind chill on Friday morning, but it is still going to be cold enough to potentially damage plants and possibly harm any people or pets as temperatures drop to the lower 30s, a light freeze. Once we get past Friday morning, that's it. We're smooth sailing after that with milder conditions into the weekend. Friday back to the 60s. Friday will be feeling just like it felt probably yesterday. If you remember, yesterday we had some 60s on Tuesday. So we're looking at 60s returning on Friday, and that continues through the weekend and beyond. You'll notice these are temperatures for the coastal locations like Gulfport, Biloxi, Pascagoula, but there are going to be places that are inland, near and north of Interstate 10, and it actually gets a little warmer. So I want to show you that 10-day forecast, which includes both the coastal zone and the inland zone. And for example, by the time we get to Friday afternoon, even though it will be 66 degrees Friday afternoon in a place like Gulfport, Biloxi, and Pascagoula, it'll be 70 degrees Friday afternoon in a place like Wiggins, Saucier, and Van Cleef. And then you'll notice those 70s or lower 70s Friday, Saturday, Sunday inland, but they actually jump up to mid and upper 70s by the time we get to next week. So Wiggins could be only 4 degrees away from 80 as we go to the middle of next week. Now this 10-day forecast stops just shy of the big Mardi Gras weekend, so we are not able to quite take a look at that just yet, but by the time we get to the end of this week, just tomorrow we'll have the big Saturday in our 10-day, and then on Friday we'll have the big Sunday in our 10-day forecast. So we'll be able to take our first looks at the big Mardi Gras weekend tomorrow and Friday as those come into view of the 10-day forecast that I show you every morning, or at least some mornings. But right now, it does look like a mild temperature pattern is going to stretch into the middle of the month with coastal temperatures in the upper 60s and inland temperatures in the upper 70s. So quite a bit of variation, but it is a possibility. It doesn't look like there's any kind of major cold snaps. I know we had to put up with those for the last few weeks. Last couple of months, we've had some serious cold snaps, but right now, signs are pointing toward a bit of a sort of spring-like trend. If we actually have temperatures that are close to 70 by the time we get to mid-February, that would actually be more typical of mid-March to see a temperature of around 70 in coastal Mississippi. So a little bit of ahead of schedule with those temperatures. Nothing major. It's not like it's summer heat or anything. But just a friendly reminder that spring officially begins on the calendar next month. And even though earlier this week the groundhog tried to give us the winter blues by telling us that there would be 6 more weeks of winter, look, that also translates to spring starting next month. And I think that we're going to get a little bit of a preview as we go into next week. And as you saw, the forecast is pointing towards signs of a milder pattern well into next week. Well, that'll do it for today's Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you for watching Waking Up with Wesley with WLOX First Alert Weather Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams.